Friday, and thank you for your time and listening to our presentation here today. We are Group 2. My name is Forrest Ball.
I'm Alejandro Garcia.
Elisa Hitt Davis.
And we're excited to present to you our ideas of how we can invite people to be a part of our green. And so we're really trying to show consumers and citizens of the United States that it's a small step for them, but a really big step for the Earth. And so, when we go forward here, I really want to walk you guys through kind of from the big picture of the life cycle of a device here in the United States. So first, obviously, we have the purchase of an electronic device, whether that's a desktop, a laptop, or a mobile device. It goes through kind of the normal wear and tear. We obviously have data that kind of gives us a good sense of when things reach the end of life, especially on the residential side, which is what we understand is most important to you. And so when a device does reach that end of life term, it typically goes into three different buckets or three silos. One is it's discarded into the trash, which obviously has some pretty negative environmental effects due to the various metals that are inside of it. It's reused or refurbished, and or it's recycled. We think that the reused and refurbished piece is an area that we maybe would have trouble getting into because consumers are more motivated by different factors, like making money off their personal device or laptop or desktop by selling it personally straight to eBay or other factors. The discard silo is very small, 1% or less of the market, and so we really want to focus on that recycling piece. And so we really see the agency is focusing right here onto this part of this cycle, and specifically these two arrows. So, so on this side of it, we want to invite consumers to be green and to do the right thing for the world. And so we really want to make sure that they have the option and the ease of taking the devices that are sitting around the home, sitting in drawers, and taking them off their hands and lifting that burden. And so then on our side, we also want to be green, but the cash side of green. And then we also see that there's a lot of value for the agency to make a lot of money by selling them and making money with a third-party vendor.
So having identified that this is the part of the cycle that we wanted to focus on, the collecting the devices to be recycled and then selling them to the third-party resale vendors, we went on to develop projections for how big might this market potentially be. So this chart was built by taking the sales data for electronic devices. We know how many of them have been sold over the past since 1992, which is really when individuals began purchasing these devices for personal use. We know how long an average consumer keeps their electronic devices, laptops, desktops, and computers. And we chose to focus for this program on the laptops and the mobile devices because they're a larger market and because the transportation costs for desktop are high enough and there's not a demonstrated retail market for them. So we thought that these were really the areas of opportunity. So this is based off of, we know that an average residential customer, 50% of cell phones are recycled in year 2, and then cumulatively up through 5 years out. So this was built on looking at each of these years. We had to make some projections to look into the future, and we assumed that laptop sales would remain constant, and that factors into our numbers because the first laptops start getting discarded after 3 years. So that will show up there. And then the cell phone market is expanding, so we thought that if we held it constant that we would be underestimating. So we assumed a constant rate of growth for the cell phone market. And that builds into our projection. It's a growing market, and 60% of residential cell phones are recycled. 70% of residential laptops are recycled. So that is potentially a large and growing pie, especially in the mobile sector, for us to focus on and capitalize and turn into a revenue stream.
So we know we have this large volume of laptops and mobile phones that we can tap into. But how do we do that? That is really the heart of the issue. So we have come up with a two-pronged approach. As Forrest mentioned earlier, our focus is on the two arrows in that diagram, which is working with the customer and working with the vendors. So first of all, in working with the customers, we want to make sure that we are capturing as many of these phones as possible. We know that these phones for a lot of people doesn't have much value, and that's where we make our profit. That's, the trick is, that's the connection that we bring. So we encourage a flyer campaign, and that's both physical flyers in our agency retail stores, but also electronic. We realize that a lot of the growth in the mobile phone use is in our demographics, so students like at Syracuse University. And with the network that the agency has, we can really tap into that and do different drives, different campaigns, competitions amongst non-traditional households, such as students at Syracuse who might change their phone once a year, once every 2 years, at a higher rate than other people might. We also thought about door-to-door handouts with delivery. So we're already visiting these people's homes. So why not just drop off a handout with the package that says, hey, look, listen, you have a phone lying around, we'll take it off your hands. Why do you want it to give it to us? Because we're doing something good with it. We're helping the environment. Another possibility is the Give Back, Give Your Electronics, which is you would partner with a foundation of your choice and say, for every mobile device that we receive, we will do X. And X can be, give $1 to a certain charity, we can plant a tree, whatever you guys would prefer to market it as. We leave it a little bit open-ended there for you guys' input. On the other side, on the vendor side, we want to make sure that we're collecting these phones and also have someone to give them to. We don't want to keep them. We're not interested in having tons and tons of phones. So we know that there's a huge demand for these phones. For example, in one of the articles that we looked at, $65 for a cell phone. Our charging rates are going to be a lot less than that, but they're worth that to the people who recycle them. So we know that with this strategy, we can actually create the profit margin and give the customer, take the phone from the customer and give it to the vendors at a lower price than they would if the interaction was amongst the two.
So these are the potential revenue numbers based off the chart that we saw a few slides ago. This is based on all of the total available devices to be recycled each year. And since we're not sure what price we'll be able to get from the third-party vendors, we decided to look at a couple of different options. We started at 5 and at 10, 5 for cell phones and 10 for laptops based on our cost to us to transport them. It costs a flat rate of $1 per phone plus 10 cents per pound. So the heaviest cell phones would cost up to about $1.50 to transport. And I think the figure was about $2.50 for laptops. So this is building in a substantial margin here. And you can see that this has the potential to be highly profitable. If, as Alejandro mentioned, BlackBerry is worth up to $65 to the retailer. They're willing to cut a check for that directly to the consumer. So we understand that not all of the phones that we collect will be those high-value smartphones, which is why we didn't go up to 65 in our projections. But if we're able to sell the cell phones for, say, an average of $20 a piece, and we could detail this a little bit better by getting a picture of how many smartphones versus flip phones are sold in the market so that we could build a picture on aggregate of what the average value of a phone being recycled in a year would be. That could give us a little more leverage in negotiating these contracts. But even looking at these different price points, which we're happy to do more research on for you, if we were able to sell the phones for $10 a piece, this is a $1.5 billion potential revenue stream. If we're able to get $20 a piece for them, it's $3 billion. And this is a pretty substantial instant revenue, and this is per year. And starting in 2014 and looking out towards 2018 with our sales projections built in.
Now I'm going to talk about the potential challenges we need to consider about the operation of our program. The first one will be the competitors. The competitor, including the competitor that already existed in the market, as well as the upcoming competitor that will come in the future. If for the existing competitors, we will assume that they will put their major focus on the urban market. So it will leave us a good opportunity for the rural market. But it will also there will also be some barriers that we need to consider about in the rural markets. And for the new competitors, if we make a good profit of it, if our program is really successful, then it will definitely bring new competitors that want to share the market. So, but the good points, the good news for us is at that point, at that time, we'll already be profitable, so we can use some of our profit to for more effective advertisement. And the second concern will be the consumer apathy or lack of program awareness. Since we can't afford a lot of money on advertisement, like put commercials on TV. So it is a question that if we can effectively attract public attention during our budget constraint. And the third challenge will be the cost of negotiation with the third-party firms. Since we're talking about a contract with the third-party firms, a contract of thousands of or even millions of orders, not a single delivery. So it will cost some time, some labor, power, and other resources to get the contract from the third-party firms. And the fourth challenge will be the consumer awareness of phone value. If our program is successful, we will attract a broad range of donations from the consumers, but at the same time, there will also be more people realizing the market value of their used devices. So instead of donating them to us, they will probably directly sell it to the third-party vendors, resellers. And the last is the advertising cost. Our profit, how much profit we're going to make, depends a lot on the success of our advertise. So since we only have a limited amount of startup costs, startup money, so we need to consider how much money we need to use for advertisement in order to maximize our profits.
So, what would this do for your agency? Basically, we are hitting the triple bottom line. We're looking at revenue generation and successfully generating revenue. We are showing our true colors. We're not only helping you as an agency be green within, but showing the customers that you are a green agency, and portraying that. And we're lifting off the burden of our customers. We're taking something that they don't necessarily value that much, and transporting to a place where it will be valuable and providing a new and very useful service. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm curious, do you have any data around the split between urban and rural populations? I think the point that was made about how the competitive space is sort of focused on the urban market was a good one. Do we have any data to sort of support the fact that we have a sort of a viable niche in the rural population?
I think in terms of specific numbers, not offhand, I do not. I'd be obviously more than happy to get that for you. I think it was more of an intuitive thought that since we are an agency and we're not for profit, we have these retail stores in rural areas that these for-profit competitors have little to no incentive to go into, and so we kind of see that as just an intuitive competitive advantage there.
It's basically leveraging the network that we do know exists for us.
I have two questions. One deals with the market share, customer market analysis, and the revenue projections. I think they were best case scenarios, right? And you're assuming, I was trying to read your graph, you're assuming everyone adopts the program from day one, right? There's no sort of burn-in. Is that correct?
Yes, this is maximum maximum shares.
So the assumption is that from the day we launch the program, everyone who has a device, who opts
Um,
in.
Yeah, that is like the maximum market share that we could receive. But the point is that this program would start up with very few costs. And as you saw with the spread between the cost of actually shipping the things and what we would be selling them for, even if we would be selling each cell phone for $5, we have a $3.50 profit margin. And even counting a cost for advertising per unit, if you do that for like $1, which is still a relatively large amount, you still have a $2.50 profit margin. So for each unit that you sell, you will still be making money. So you might not be actualizing, the billions in the first year, but by the second and third year, with the success that the faith that we have in the success of this program, we think that you can reach a very high number.
It sounds like you're concerned that was optimistic in terms of revenue that we could pull in. And so we were just trying to answer the question, how big is the pie that we're trying to slice?
Okay.
Yeah, and I think further, I'll also add a little bit too there. We went in terms of projections looking forward. Obviously the mobile device side of this is really where there's a lot going, and with the recent recession and things, we kind of assume that there might be kind of a lag in terms of purchasing of new phones. And so actually in terms of projections, this could be on the low end, and obviously, starting up, we might not get 100%, but there could be growth even higher than this. So this could be a floor too.
And I had a question that's somewhat related to that. So if I accept that the proposition is everyone opts in or a high number opt in, you talked about the challenges. Have you given any thought to the workforce analysis? Do we have the capacity to handle that volume?
We gave it some thought to the extent of actually like collecting the phones and thinking through the process that an agency goes in delivering. We would really be looking at mainly people like dropping off their phones in the mail, so it wouldn't be much of work added on to the individuals at that point in time. When it starts building up, maybe if we are collecting billions of cell phones, shipping them out to the vendors, yes, we would have to conduct further workforce analysis on that. But once again, going back to the profit margin, I think the really interesting thing here is that there's such a huge profit margin in these numbers that we would still be able to do that.
We did make the assumption that this transportation volume could be handled by our existing system.
So I have a couple clarifying questions. So just to make sure, your program is focused on donations exclusively. So similar to, say, toner cartridges or ink cartridges, people drop them off at a post office in a box or in their mail, and you collect it and then you negotiate to resell them to third parties. Did you consider at all partnering with existing reseller services such as like Giselle or any of those as like an alternative to just relying on donations?
I think we did. I think one piece that we were concerned about, especially with when talking to you and the client, that we thought there might be threats to our competitors in terms of partnerships with other companies, and that even if we could, that we might be outbid in that sense. And so we would like to kind of focus on donations first. I don't think it's out of the question, and certainly you guys can speak to that if you would like. But I think that was our initial thought.
Yeah, I think this is the foot in the door, or the first step. And when we talked to our client about it, we realized that we aren't as competitive as some of the private firms on prices. So if we start off with donations, which are very, very low cost, we can then, once we see the profits, we can then move on to a more maybe aggressive marketing strategy or a more competitive pricing system for these resellers than we would have for individuals.
And I think that's part of how we framed it as well. We are positioning it as the agency is helping the consumers solve a problem. They have these phones. We're making the assumption that people would generally want to do something with the phones other than have them in the drawer if it was easy for them to do. So we're saying, you know what, we'll solve that problem for you. We'll take that phone off your hands for you and do something good with it. So it's a way to connect the customers to the greenness of our agency by sort of expanding our mission out to them.
And so just because I know you mentioned this a little bit, but can you touch on again why you decided not to include desktops in this program?
Honestly, the main reason that we decided not to include the desktops in this program is because they're a small market share and they're declining.
Okay.
So we really wanted to focus on things that had the capability for the next 10, 15 years to continue at a constant rate of growth or improve. The cost of transporting desktops was also a factor, and in our research it was less clear that there was a demand for used desktops.
Good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.